Outsourcing cold calling, techniques for success. Cold calling in 2025, why outsourcing became practical. Cold calling isn't dead, it's just unforgiving. In 2025, the average dial-to-meeting rate across B2B teams is about 2.3%, down from 4.82% in 2024, which means most teams are doing a lot more work for the same or less pipeline. When leaders say cold calling doesn't work, what they usually mean is our process can't survive today's math. The connect rate reality is equally tough. Most teams see only 3 to 10% connects, and many reps need 18+ dials just to reach one human. That level of volume is hard to sustain with an in-house SDR team without burnout, constant hiring, and an increasing pile of tools and management overhead. Outsourcing cold calling is often a response to these constraints, not a shortcut. A strong cold calling agency or SDR agency can make the grind more efficient by combining better data, tighter coaching, and a repeatable process. The goal isn't more calls, it's higher quality conversations that convert into qualified next steps. If we treat outsourced callers like a strategic extension of our SDR org, outsourced cold calling becomes a predictable lever for pipeline instead of a noisy activity line item. The business case: cost, coverage, and speed. For many teams, sales outsourcing starts with economics. A typical, fully loaded, in-house SDR seat can land around $12,010 per month once you factor in salary, benefits, tools, enablement, management time, and ramp. That cost structure is fixed even when territories shift, seasonality hits, or a segment stops converting. At the same time, cold calling is expensive to do poorly. The average B2B cost per lead from cold calling is roughly $300. When list quality is weak or qualification is sloppy, those dollars turn into meetings that never become opportunities, which quietly taxes your AEs and damages confidence in outbound. In other words, cheap, pay-per-appointment lead generation can become very expensive if quality guardrails don't exist. It's not surprising that 59% of companies cite cost savings as a primary reason for outsourcing, and the broader B2B sales outsourcing services market is projected to grow from $2.74 billion 2024 to $6.07 billion 2033. For B2B leaders, the most practical benefit is flexibility. An outsourced sales team can scale seats up or down faster than recruiting, and it can help compress the typical 60 to 90-day ramp when you need coverage now. Setting the foundation: ICP, messaging, and success metrics. The fastest way to fail with cold calling services is to skip the strategic work and hand a vendor a vague brief. Before the first dial, we need an ICP in writing: who we call, why they care, what triggers matter, what disqualifies them, and what good looks like at the account and contact level. A provider can't out-execute a blurry target, and guessing burns thousands of dials that should have been avoided. Next, align messaging and qualification with the same rigor you'd use to hire SDRs internally. That means a talk track that matches how buyers speak, an objection plan based on real loss reasons, and qualification questions your AEs agree will produce opportunity-grade meetings. If compensation is tied purely to booked meetings with no acceptance criteria, you'll get calendar volume, but not pipeline. Finally, define KPIs that move from activity to outcomes. Track dials and connects, but manage to dial to meeting rate, show rate, meeting to opportunity conversion, and pipeline created per segment, because that's how you protect brand and AE time. The table below is a practical starting point for SLAs with a cold calling team in modern B2B motions. Standing up the program: onboarding, systems, and handoff. Outsourcing works best when the provider behaves like an SDR pod inside your org, not a separate telemarketing vendor. That means shared context, access to CRM notes with guardrails, visibility into who's already in pipeline, and clarity on territories, routing, and follow-up expectations. If leads live in a separate portal or spreadsheet, you lose reporting accuracy, speed to lead, and the ability to iterate. The handoff process is where most B2B cold calling services either earn trust or lose it. We recommend a written definition of an accepted meeting that AEs agree to, plus standardized fields for persona, use case, pains, timeline, and next steps. When you score meetings consistently and review them weekly, you prevent the classic failure mode of pay-per-meeting lead generation, low-intent meetings that waste calendars. Plan for a 60 to 90-day ramp, not a 30-day miracle. The first few weeks should prioritize onboarding, list and talk track testing, and QA on calls. Weeks 4 through 8 are for tightening segmentation and objection handling. Month 3 is where stable benchmarks emerge. A good outsourced program creates compounding gains, but only if you give it structure and iteration time. If you manage outsourced cold calling like a call center, you'll get call center outcomes. Manage it like a revenue team, and you'll get pipeline. Techniques that lift conversion: data, coaching, and multichannel. The highest leverage technique is treating data as a first-class deliverable, not an afterthought. With 18+ dials often required per connection, bad targeting becomes a compounding tax you can't afford. Your provider should own list-building services, enrichment, verification, and segmentation by firmographics, persona, and triggers, so reps aren't dialing guesswork. Coaching is the second multiplier, and it must be operational, not occasional. Weekly call reviews, a simple scoring rubric, and rapid updates to the talk track are what separate a true outbound sales agency from cold calling companies that simply make dials. This is also how you protect brand quality. You're not just fixing scripts, you're shaping tone, positioning, and qualification discipline in real time. Multi-channel outbound is the third multiplier, and it's especially valuable when connects are scarce. Teams that combine calling with email and LinkedIn often see performance lifts of 287% plus versus single-channel outreach, which is why many top programs pair a cold calling agency with a cold email agency motion, or run both under one roof. When calls are supported by timely emails and LinkedIn touches, prospects recognize your name, trust rises, and conversations start warmer. Avoiding the biggest outsourcing mistakes. Mistake 1 is treating outsourced B2B sales like a commodity purchase. When the selection criteria is lowest hourly rate, the provider is incentivized to optimize for talk time and raw dials instead of qualified pipeline. The fix is to choose an SDR agency that reports on outcomes, meeting quality, opportunity conversion, and pipeline dollars, so incentives match your revenue goals. Mistake 2 is skipping ICP and messaging work before launch. When a provider has to guess who to call and what to say, you'll burn budget learning what should have been documented on day 1, and your team will conclude that outsourcing doesn't work. The practical solution is to co-create a playbook: ICP examples, persona pains, a positioning one-liner, top objections, and disqualifiers. Then revisit it every 2 to 4 weeks based on call reality. Mistake 3 is paying purely per meeting without quality guardrails. This almost always leads to anyone with a heartbeat bookings, which crushes AE trust and reduces follow-through on legitimate leads. Tie compensation and success criteria to accepted meetings and meeting-to-opportunity conversion, and make it visible in your CRM so both teams can see performance by rep, segment, and list source. Optimization: quality scoring, feedback loops, and scaling seats. Once the program is live, Optimize for meetings that turn into opportunities, not just meetings booked. A simple operating rhythm works. Weekly QA on call recordings, a monthly KPI review, and a shared dashboard that connects activity to pipeline. When you measure the full funnel, your outsourced sales team naturally prioritizes better research, sharper qualification, and cleaner handoffs. Use calls as a feedback loop for your entire go-to-market, not just prospecting. Cold callers hear objections, competitor names, pricing friction, and why now triggers before your marketing dashboards catch up. When we share top call snippets weekly with sales, marketing, and product, we tighten messaging, improve landing pages, and reduce sales cycle friction, turning outreach into market intelligence. Scale the right way. Start narrow, then expand seats and scope only after you prove repeatability. A pilot with 1 to 2 reps and one tight segment is usually enough to validate data quality, talk track resonance, and meeting acceptance criteria. After you hit stable benchmarks, it's safe to add more cold callers, expand into new verticals, or layer in LinkedIn outreach services and email for a coordinated sales development agency motion. What to do next? A practical 90-day plan. If you're evaluating whether to outsource sales, start with unit economics and channel fit. Cold calling still matters. About 72% of B2B organizations rely on it, and 78% of prospects say they've taken a meeting or purchased from a cold call. So the question isn't, does it work? It's, can we execute it well enough to win? For small deal sizes, the $300 average cost per cold calling lead can be hard to justify. For mid to high ACV motions, it often pencils out quickly. Operationally, the next step is simple. Document the ICP, define an accepted meeting standard, and build a measurement plan that ties to pipeline. Make CRM integration non-negotiable and establish a weekly coaching cadence before you ever argue about volume. This is how you distinguish a strategic B2B sales agency partner from generic telemarketing or telesales execution. At SalesHive, we've seen the pattern repeatedly. The best programs treat outsourced SDRs like internal hires, invest in list quality and coaching, and scale only after proving conversion. If you're comparing cold calling services or exploring an outsourced SDR model, anchor the decision on process transparency, data ownership, and opportunity conversion, not promised call volume. Done right, outsourcing cold calling becomes a durable pipeline engine that's easier to scale than hiring from scratch.